Everyone, welcome to the Tuesday, April 9th, biweekly-ish LTS working group meeting. My name is Jeremy, and I'll be the host today. I dropped the agenda doc into the chat if you want to go ahead and add your name there. Don't have a ton of topics, so if you want to add anything, feel free to go ahead and add something to the agenda. We will start things off by welcoming anybody that's new. Looks like mostly familiar faces. Right. Um, with that out of the way, couple of I think the two topics we really had for today so far. We were kind of interested in getting a KubeCon debrief from anybody that was able to go to KubeCon, attend any of the contributor summit things, heard anything about LTS wishes from folks. So if you were able to attend KubeCon, would love to hear from you. I think Micah was there, and I think Bridget was there, but I think Bridget dropped off.
I was there. Yep. When the meeting before QCon said, "Hey, let's get together and discuss." I thought, "Oh yeah, we'll have a sidebar," and I didn't realize that I would be on stage, um, which was great. And then mid session realized, oh wait, I didn't get this PR cleared, and I'm on a stage with technically competitors from other cloud companies. And I got a question from a Google director about as the AWS terms of service. But that was all fun. The yeah, the contributor summit was great. It was mostly just sort of a framing for everyone who is there of kind of what we've been discussing, things we've been looking into, some of a recap of the work that we've done, that a lot of that Jordan's done in terms of analyzing regressions, in terms of backward compatibility support, not turning on pre-production APIs, that sort of thing, and as well as Go support as well. So it wasn't necessarily, I think, like 2023 was sort of the foundation for this working group in terms of having unconference session and sort of determining that we needed to turn this working group back on. This time it was a lot more of just education for everyone who was there, who hasn't necessarily participated in the working group, and kind of highlighting the work that we've done so far. Bridget, you were there too. Did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, sorry I was late. Zoom was being exciting. I noted that there were a number of kind of where do we go from here questions. Like when in the Q&A section, people were saying, okay, what do we do now? Like, what's our next step? I think a bunch of people are looking for things that I'm not 100% sure we can give them immediately, like skip upgrades, but then they're looking for other things that maybe they don't even know we have these days, like easier upgrades. And so I think that there's a combination between, and you got to tell me what you thought from your conversations with people after your panel, Micah. But I think there's a difference between like what people already know about and what we've already done. And there's that disconnect that I think we're still working through. Yeah.
That sounds like something we talked about a couple meetings ago, like signal boosting the things that are available and are like would make people's lives better today, even if there are still things people want that we don't have. So I think Scott had.
I was to do a little bit of a survey to see like what is happening around potential to do multiple control plane updates with a single workload disruption, leveraging the keyword version skew policies. I looked into that at least for like kubeadmin, and it just talks about the possibility of skew. I think there is room to like maybe sell that a little bit to say, hey, we can make your upgrades across multiple versions better
Mhm.
if you leverage the version skew, and here's how you do it, that'll should help you catch up a little faster than if you don't do this. I hadn't looked into other tools yet, but I certainly want to.
Yeah, and I see that Mo just joined us, and Mo, we were just discussing the stuff that came out of your panel. Love to hear your input as well.
You just mean the conversation we had?
Yeah, you had your discussion, and then there was, I think, a pretty lively Q&A with the audience. Just like what
Yeah.
stands out in your mind.
Let's see. So I don't know if the recording is up because I wanted to transcribe it, but I don't know if that's been put up. I know the main talks are up, so I still have to go kind of figure that out. Um, I think probably what stuck out to me most is I think there's a lot of conversations that folks are thinking about the fan out problem that I think we've considered in this group. I know um, Rob from Gateway is in particular was quite stressed by the idea of supporting like 15 releases of Cube because I was picking on him. I was like, you say you support five, but if we support three upgrade skips, that's really like five times three, right? So are you okay supporting 15? Oops, I was just
Wait,
messing.
what?
I was picking on him like what is the absolute worst case of if we let you skip three versions with like a control plane upgrade?
That doesn't mean 15. That's not the same.
I know, I was just picking on him because he's
Okay. All right.
like you have to wait 5 years before you're allowed to do anything.
I mean, like that's honestly my biggest fear about anything that keeps lots of old miners around. It's like every improvement that gets made, anyone writing to the lowest common denominator has to wait years to adopt. And then like the things we talk about where we don't get feedback because people don't adopt stuff, like it's a vicious cycle there. Anyway, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Continue.
Yeah, I mean, uh, I guess give me some time. I want to actually like transcribe all the stuff and turn it into actual notes instead of whatever's on the top of my head at the moment. I I guess in a sense I'm still pretty positive about the whole thing. Like it was surprising the amount of involvement, I guess, we had. So I think it's a topic that people care about a lot, and I think there's work to be done here. Um, briefly spoke with Han about the compatibility version stuff we're working on, which mirrors pretty similar to how Go itself is kind of approaching similar types of things. I think that'll be a really good step for us, um, especially just sort of at the developer level of thinking about like what kind of behaviors change over time and how do we control them and think about them. Like I was talking with Han about like how we made it so like auth config with auto reload, and would that be a behavior that we would have put behind some kind of compatibility version, had the system been more like stable at the time. Like it's all alpha right now, so maybe it doesn't matter, but like imagine if it was like in the future. Um so yeah, I think I'm pretty positive on the whole thing. But yeah, let me collect the stuff and see if we can have a more specific discussion.
Did did you were there more questions from people who were responsible for running clusters or from people who were sort of on the receiving end of cluster versions? Like these versions are being forced on me and I'm having to react versus like I'm the one taking each new version to production. Or was it a decent mix? I'm just curious.
I think because it was at contributor summit, it was actually more kind of focused around like the developer side of things and community side. Um, no one unfortunately came up and that talked about LTS at the meet and greet. But like Micah and myself were there. Uh, I mean, it was a lot of folks there, but I guess people weren't necessarily expecting that to be where the LTS conversation would be.
Okay.
Um, so maybe as a follow-up, like if folks are going to come to like KubeCon NA, there might be
Sig
there might
update
be
or
something
working
we
group
can
update.
So what?
Like a working group update at NA.
Yeah, I think that'd be a great idea.
Yeah. Uh, Maybe not just an update. Like it would be really great to try to collect more conversations around that aren't necessarily just our like local community because like we are very much like in the thick of things. So like the problems that we see as problems might not actually be the problems that normal people using this is. I just saw a really funny video that I shared internally about just Cube having a ton of complexity and like I was really tempted to comment as, yeah, even as a developer of Cube, I don't necessarily find this parody to be too far off from reality. Um, this is every 2 weeks, right? So like I can try to put something together by the next one, and then we can chat.
Okay, that'd be great. I think when does anybody know when the North America submission CFP window opens?
I
Because
think it's
because
already,
there's a
I
maintainer
was
track.
already open.
It's already open. Okay.
yeah. KubeCon is over.
When does it
So
close?
talk
I
for
guess that's a
KubeCon.
more important
Yeah,
question.
going on.
Let's see. Because
June
I think
9th.
there's two ways that we can get something if we want to have discussions like outside of contributor summit. The maintainer track is definitely a way. An earn session would also be another way that we can make sure that we have the June 9th. Okay, cool.
We had talked about like the fan out effect. So there's the fan out effect for things that built on top of Cube, but there's also the fan out effect of dependencies of Cube. Were there any like TD, container D, Node OS like kernel version folks there who were commenting on like, oh yeah, Cube has like C groups V1 and C groups V1 is whatever in system D. Like that type of thing, was that sort of the dependency aspect talked about at all?
So Micah, his name is Phil, right?
Yep, Phil was there.
Yeah, so Phil from Container D was there on the panel, and um, it was interesting to me that so they're adopting a model of their LTS um, will include like I don't know if it applies to Cube exactly, but like as they've developed certain features within Container D, and then those have become standardized within the CRI API, instead of being like a bespoke thing that they do. They've decided that at least in those cases, they'll be willing to backport effectively those quote unquote features into their LTS. But it's not that they're backporting functionality, it's that the functionality already exists as a specific feature of Containerd, but it didn't exist as a CRI feature yet. So once it becomes standardized as a CRI feature, they want to map it through, which I think is interesting because that's how we would interface with them, right? For the most part, is we would be interfacing with them through CRI. So for projects like Cube, that would actually probably be really beneficial because that's sort of the layer that we interact with them.
Interesting. So it's like it was a functionality in container D in a previous version, and then it graduated in like the next version of container D, like 1.7 or 2.0 or something. And so in hindsight, they could see that the functionality was stable. Like they didn't make changes to it before they like graduated it or exposed it in a future version. And then they backported API exposure of it via CRI API. Is that a
I think like the way I understood it was that sometimes they build their own features that are and say they become stable, but they're not necessarily features that the entire community has agreed on. It's just something specific, right? So it's like they've effectively got their own complete special thing. And then over time, other members of the community say, hey, wouldn't that be nice if container runtimes generally supported this? So, people write up new specs, they come up with schemas. And then once everyone agrees on that, basically they said that in those specific cases, all they need is basically the schema and the wiring, and they'd be willing to put those as backports in their LTS to make it easier for people to like upgrade like Cube on top of them
yeah?
um, without
And
necessarily.
that this is not super relevant here, but we we have the CRI API. The CRI API Go types and prototypes are in a module that's under Kubernetes. And we bump that to the latest Go version routinely. And we got pushback in the past because that required containerd to bump the version of Go they use to build up to the same version as the CRI API module. And our answer in the past was like, well, if there's a vulnerability, we'll patch our release branches. Just stick on our release branches as long as you need to keep building with old Go. But if they are picking up new CRI API versions in containerd LTS branches, that I didn't know they were doing that. That the just use the old CRI API branch doesn't work for that case. I'll make a note to think about what to do there. That connects to something with the Go compatibility, where Go compatibility was forcing up builder versions. And it looks like they're going to fix the ability to stick on compatibility flags, even when you force up the Go builder version. But that won't land until Go 123. So in the long term, I think we'll be okay here. But for the next 6 months, we might need to pay attention to this. I'll make a note. It's fractal. There's so many interactions back and forth between these projects. All right. Anyone else have questions about stuff that happened in KubeCon, particular dimensions of what's going on?
Jeremy, you're muted.
Did anybody else attend, or was it just
so I basically tricked Micah and Phil and Rob, not on purpose. I thought I kind of made it clear that they were going to be up on stage with me, but I guess I didn't make it super clear. So they were confused when I made them sit on the stage.
We all walked into the room and saw our name on the screen. We're like, wait, what?
Here's a chair and here's a microphone. What are you going to do?
No, literally, that is exactly what happened. So it was great. It was great.
It was great. From the audience, I feel like people got a lot of ideas and a lot of questions answered. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah, I was sad Jordan and Jeremy and y'all weren't there, and Scott and others.
I was sad too. Someone on my team was trying to share the meeting with me over a terrible cell connection. I was getting 1 out of every 20 words. It's like, I'll just ask them what happened.
The Wi-Fi was spotty.
Yeah, it was not good.
That's a KubeCon tradition. I think every year I'm surprised at how bad it is. It's 2024 now. Should have Wi-Fi that works. All right. Jordan, I moved my topic to the end because I think it makes sense to do yours first. You had an update on the regression data. Do you want to?
Yeah. I don't know if sharing my screen will work. If someone wants to open the link to the tracking sheet
I can do that
and share that would be awesome.
Yeah, 1 sec. Let me put myself in do not disturb mode so that I don't get a bunch of text messages from my wife right now. Okay.
So spring of last year, so KubeCon EU of last year was when we started putting this data together and actually sort of realized how badly we were doing in keeping our release branches stable. And so that was right.
Sorry, can I interrupt for a second and say, Jeremy, there's notifications you should close, but also it's really small.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Jordan.
If you shrink the window, it might make it grow.
Let's see if I can make it bigger.
And big in it.
How's that?
That's better. Thanks. So I think that was right around the release of 127. It was kind of April-ish of last year. So right around the time 127 was released. And that's when we started signal boosting like the impact of regressions and the impact of regressing with backports. And so at the time, maybe I think 128 had just been released. It was like 1 month out the door, something like that. And so and then we signal boosted that again at KubeCon NA, and I've really been paying attention to what we take back to release branches. And so far, it actually looks like that's paying off a lot. So 128 and 129 are the only minor versions since 2020, since we started paying attention here, where we haven't regressed in a patch release. Like we still found some regressions and fixed them in those branches, but actually fewer than old miners. So we're tied or better than our best going back to 2020. But the big thing that I think is really, really great is we haven't found any places where we took a backport to 128 or 129 where we caused regression. So that's really excellent. Like keeping our patch releases strictly better, so people are confident in bumping up patch releases to get security fixes and CVE fixes, things like that. That's huge. Anyway, we just so rarely have good news to share that I wanted to make sure I shared that and let people know. And whatever people have been doing to sort of ask hard questions about backports, like is this fixing a longstanding bug or is this fixing a regression? Should this be taken back? Are we 100% sure about this backport? Keep asking those questions because it's helping. Anyway, I'm gonna keep tracking this and keep pushing on this, but yeah, it's encouraging to see data show that things we try to do actually help. That's it.
That's
Yeah, I
really
think sorry, Bridget, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying that's really impressive.
I think it's really cool to see that data presented, and I think maybe that's, if anybody has any questions about that, we can go through that first. But I think that kind of ties into one of the topics we had from a couple weeks ago, the messaging about maybe there is hope. I think from the February 27th meeting. So the one thing I really wanted to cover today, if we had time, and it looks like we do, is what do we want to do next, and like let's have some concrete next steps to go. I think we identified a few things a couple meetings back. KubeCon happened and other stuff happened, so I don't think we've done a ton there yet, but I think it would be cool to circle back on some of that messaging. Maybe a blog post with this data would be really useful for people in the community to see. I think that there still is an impression or perception that upgrading is dangerous and like there are bugs and it's risky. I think this shows that we've made a lot of progress as a community around making that less true in terms of regressions, at least. So I think that would be a good one to hammer into a blog post about, just in general, it's easier to do than you think it might be. Anybody else have any concrete next things? I think from our data, the two things that stuck out to me, and I think Bridget mentioned them before, skip level upgrades are something that people are very interested in. I don't know if there's anything we can concretely do there until we get further along the compatibility API stuff. But the other one, like, is there anything we can do to show that upgrades are safer? And maybe for that one, is there anything that we can work on around upgrade testing that would be useful to?
Big +1 on upgrade testing. Like, well, yeah, upgrade testing at all, and exercising upgrades with multi-server clusters, which is how
people do it.
People run their clusters.
Mm-hmm.
Like in terms of surfacing issues, actually testing the paths. I mean, like I think most providers probably have tests like that. Hopefully they have tests like that. We have tests like that. But shifting that left up into open source testing, so that we're actually running multi-server clusters and upgrading them in tests, so we notice problems early. Like in my mind, that's the number one thing we could do to make upgrades better for people today. Like everybody, not just people who want LTS stuff, but everybody. And it's easy to say and really hard to do, and that's
Yeah.
why it's like perennially talked about and not done. It's like the weird intersection between SIG testing and SIG cluster lifecycle and every SIG.
But there is something hopeful there in what you stated, Jordan, which is that this is not a we either improve it or we don't. This is a continuum. And so every bit of improvement that we can make does accrue to better outcomes for people.
It does, as long as it sticks. So with upgrade testing, especially, what we've seen is someone, gets bitten by an upgrade issue or gets to be in their bonnet, for some other reason. It's like, we're gonna fix this upgrade testing thing, and they do a lot of work and they put a framework in place and they get a job running, and then it like starts flaking, and then it turns solid red, and then it becomes
It's
useless.
turned off.
And so
Sure.
like we need the story for how do the improvements stick, if we're going to benefit from it. Yeah. The flakes and upgrade tests is what typically kept them from becoming pre-submits. And if they're not pre-submits, then any random PR can break a thing, and it falls on like some poor soul from, I guess, a SIG release rotation or like CI signal, like to figure out what broke the thing and then go hunt it down. Like I think the lesson we've seen is that things that aren't pre-submits are really difficult to keep green.
So as a concrete next step for that, would it make sense to go to SIG testing and SIG cluster lifecycle and discuss what that might look like?
Yes, I think there are probably existing conversations we could link into, but
Okay.
yes, like reviving those, plus oneing those, taking people who are interested in sort of the LTS effort and saying, here's a place you can help. Like asking those SIGs, what's needed here? Is it a capability in kubeadm or kind? Is it, more CI capacity? Is it hands on keyboard to write a test? Is it like what's holding us back, and how can we help?
Okay.
For concrete next steps, jumping back to the regression thing, I remembered you had opened an issue about backport criteria, and it would be great to close that out if we can, now that we sort of have data that being a little more stringent helps. I couldn't actually find the issue. I was hunting around for it in the background. But maybe if there's language we want to update there, be like pretty, not hard-nosed. What's the word I'm looking for? A nicer version of hard-nosed. Pretty
Rigorous.
Good, about like what the criteria are. Anyway, if you can find that issue, or if I find that issue, I'll drop that in. I think closing that out would be a good next step.
Okay, yeah, I can do that.
I'm having visions back to my linear algebra class where my teacher was, you must be precise and concise. That was a fun class.
Yeah, I'm trying to hold myself to that standard as well. So there was a backport for like a cell cost estimation bug. It's actually a very small, very scoped bug fix, but it's not a regression. It's not a you couldn't make the case that it's a data loss issue or like horribly severe. It's like, okay, this makes this one kind of thing possible where it wasn't before. And saying like, you know what, let's not backport that. You want that fix? Like it's in 130. Just because we've seen like overlapping stuff where we bumped a dependency and it had some side effect that we didn't think about in the past. So yeah, I think it was first.
Sorry, I've been out for a few of these and then just joined late. I'm just not clear on the status of the data manipulation. I know Josh was working on a table for us and how that work is being leveraged to, it would just for everybody too, that work is helping us to dig into the survey results better. So how are we using that for?
Yes, I think we used the first round of analysis to inform some of the in the 2 meetings ago, we discussed some outreach and some blogs, some messaging doc updates. So it's informed that. One of the other ones was that we should do more data analysis, and I don't think we've made any progress on any of the things we identified from that set of things. So the thing I was going to say next was let's follow up on the previous list of action items and maybe let's make some tracking issues so that we have some things we can put on the project board and check for next time. Just so we have like concrete things to include there because we do have a project board. We can just put them there and track them. Let me put that in the notes.
As far as I know, he didn't hand over anything, right?
Let me see. I think he made a simple dump of the
Okay.
data
Okay.
before KubeCon, and then
Yeah, that was his
went to KubeCon.
plan.
Let me see if I can find his message.
I know he said something in Slack
Yeah,
for
so
KubeCon, but I don't think I saw a follow-up.
yeah, so maybe we need to follow up with Josh
Yeah,
to get more of that.
because one of the goals of using that survey data more flexibly is that it will help us to think about different scenarios that
Mhm.
the respondents face, and that we don't get biased too much towards one solution versus another. That we have like the ability to kind of manipulate the data to figure out, okay, well, in this particular situation, what might be the right goal. And Jeremy and I, just for everybody else, in case you remember, Jeremy and I took the survey data and we came up with some very loose scenarios that the data was showing to us based on like the order of the questions that were asked in the survey. So then what Josh is working on gives us more precision into that because there's just too much data for us to do it ourselves. So I would say that would be really helpful for us to avoid doing things that may not actually solve the respondents' concerns.
Also into that. Do you want to follow up with Josh or do you want me to do that?
Yeah, I can do that. And I think his next goal is to do more heavy duty work after Open Source Summit. So it's probably still his timeline.
Okay. Mo, you got your hand up too. Do you want to jump in?
Yeah, just a quick comment on like what Jordan was saying earlier about that cell bug backport. Like, not too long ago, we had like a security control bypass thing reported to SRC uh, in some of our token handling logic. And after a brief hour of panic, when Jordan and I went back and forth and confirmed to ourselves that it wasn't horrible, though we did have at least a solid hour where we thought it was really horrible and then spent the rest of the day trying to calm back down. Uh, uh, I fixed that in like 1:30 and then like my immediate inclination was to backport it. But then Jordan reminded me that, well, it didn't actually meet the criteria for backports. And, I thought about it for a bit and yeah, I mean, I don't think there was an actual issue and it would have just been like a hardening thing but just thinking about, risk and those types of things, it made sense just not to do it. So I think that's a good behavior change, because I in the past I would have immediately backported it as far as the last supported version without even thinking about it.
That's a good extra data point. I put that in the notes, but thanks for saying it so we can capture it for the recording, and we can maybe point people to that as they adjust to our potentially more rigorous backporting guidelines. Okay, I think we are just about out of time today. If I try to summarize some of the next steps, blog post highlighting improvements and regressions in quality, blog post maybe highlighting the survey data again. Jordan mentioned that we should update or close that backport issue by increasing the rigor of um, the sorry, the cherry picking criteria. So I'll take care of that one. Anything else that people have on top of mind that they'd like to focus on for next time, or just in general as we go forward? I think another one would be starting to revisit the conversation around upgrade testing with SIG testing and with cluster lifecycle.
It all sounds pretty good to me.
Okay, I'll go back and summarize these things, and maybe drop some action items into the working group LTS Slack channel, just so we have visibility for folks. Alrighty, well, have a great rest of your Tuesday. See you later.
Bye.